Alright guys, welcome back to another tying video with Old Florida. Today we're going to be tying Mark Giacobba's Skrimp. This is a signature Everglades pattern for him. We're going to start off by tying in extra large bead chain eyes right behind the eye, pretty much as close as you could get. We're going to tie these in with a couple nice tight X wraps and parachute wraps, making sure these eyes are really secured down. We don't want them going anywhere. Alright, once we got that down, we're going to take our thread and work our way back to a little bit behind the point of the hook. Then we're going to take our amber staz and we're going to tie that in right on the top side of the hook, tying that in with a couple nice super tight wraps, and then moving our thread right in front of the point, sorry. And we're going to palmer this toward the eye of the hook, making sure not to trap any of those fibers as much as possible. Do about 4 rotations or 3 rotations. I'm just going to back my thread off to where I can capture this easily. I'm going to do 2 wraps on that. I'm going to pull everything forward, and I'm going to do 2 or 3 wraps right in front, and then we could trim that out of the way. Once we got that done, we're going to work our thread right to the middle in between the eyes and the staz. Then we're going to come in here with our craft fur. We're going to grab a nice decent sized bundle. This is going to be about the thickness of, say, a pencil when pulled tight. Once we cut this off the hide, we're going to pinch down by the base and just take that under fur out by running it through our fingers. This just reduces the bulk of the fly. And we're going to take our fingers and kind of just get the general shape that we want of this craft fur. We want a nice little candle wick taper to it, taking the long fibers, pinching them at the top and just moving them back to get a nice little even taper to it. Once we got our desired taper, I'm going to come here and measure about 2 and a little bit lengths the shank of the hook, and then pinch. I'm going to come in here and just trim that flush, making sure that's super flush when you cut it, because we're going to tie that right on the top of the hook. And do a nice tight pinch wrap and just tie that down, making sure to stay on the top of the hook with this whole clump, keeping tension with your non-bobbin hand to make sure it stays on top. And then we're going to do a couple back wraps to smooth that out and go over it. And then we're going to move our thread right back to the middle of that again. Once we got that, we're going to come in here and grab one of the longer feathers of this dry fly rooster neck and pop that off. Then we're going to straighten the barbs out, and we're just going to start pulling all these barbs off. And when you're done with that, we're going to get 2 of those. We're going to strip all it off, and we're going to end up with something that looks like this. These are going to be the antennae to the fly. So we're going to take our first one and we're going to tie that in, kind of going with the bend of the hook. Tie it a little bit further into the base of the feather. This just gives it a little more stiffness and rigidity. I'm going to put 2 loose wraps right where I think I want it. I'm actually going to do a third one here because it's not holding very well. I'm going to invert that fly, and I'm going to do the same exact thing to the other side, making sure they're nice and symmetrical. Do 2 more loose wraps, and we can kind of adjust where we want them. I'm going to go ahead and invert it again, and I'm going to really start cranking on the back of these feathers while holding the tips of them. And then I'm going to stop right before the eyes and then trim those last little barbs off, and then go back over it and just cover those up. Then I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to move it just right in front of the craft fur. Once we got that, I'm going to take my EP brush and I'm going to tie that in right there. Leaving just a little bit of gap in between the craft fur and the brush. We're going to start palmering this toward the bend of the hook after we move our thread forward behind the eyes. Going to start palmering that nicely, making sure not to trap any fibers underneath it. This doesn't have to be a super tight palmer, but it does make the fly look a little bit better and more dense. Push a little more water if you get it nice and tight. Come up to the front, invert it, make sure the front looks good, or the top. Take our bodkin and just really start picking that back out so we can capture and tie off this brush. Once we got that picked out a little bit, I'm going to come in here and separate the brush, capture it on the bottom. And then I'm going to do 2 wraps over the brush and do 2 in front of the brush to really capture that. And we can trim away our wire. Once we got our wire trimmed away, I like to come in here with a small comb again and just really make sure I got all that fiber picked out. Alright, once we got that nice and picked out, I'm going to do 1 more wrap and then I'm going to whip finish. I like to do 2 sets of 3. This seems to be the magic number for whip finishing. It just really holds the fly secure. And then we could trim our thread off. So this fly is done with the actual tying. Now we just got to trim it. So I'm going to take this off the vise. We'll come in here with our scissors. I'm going to hold my scissors pretty much flush to the hook and the eyes, and I'm just going to trim this brush away pretty decently on the top of this, exposing that orange astaz, and that's what we really want. We want to show that little egg sac. If you could see there, we just trim that kind of at an angle. I'm going to keep continuing to trim this a little bit, making it a little bit more profile just so it tracks straighter in the water when you strip it, kind of reducing the bulk just a little bit. Then again, we want a little bit of bulk, so we want it to land softly too. Just going to trim up, clean up any of those fibers that are stray. Alright, so that looks to be about good. So that's what you want it to look like when it's trimmed. And then we're going to come in here. We're going to put our hook in the vise like this, if you have a Dynaking, but any way that you could color the craft fur. We're going to take our brown Sharpie and we're going to make 3 bars, 1 at the base, making sure to get coverage of all of the hairs, 1 right in the middle, and then 1 right at the tip. And then I'm actually going to come in here and I'm going to trim these antennae right before the craft fur ends. And that's going to be the done fly. And this is Mark Giacobba's Skrimp, and this is a deadly pattern for the Everglades National Park. It's great on big tarpon, snook, redfish out front. It's just a great all-around pattern, mainly for a little bit cleaner water. He has the doofus that we have a tying video of too, and that's more of a backcountry, dirtier water. And that's the done fly. Hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. If you want to check out more videos like this, head on over to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.